And welcome to the Factor Uncensored, a very special edition tonight. We are remembering the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. We're also asking a question. Can his legacy live on? Can his dreams live on in a world where diversity, equity, and inclusion are all bad words? Our guests are here with us. We have Kathy Bluford Daniels, former elected official, former HISD school board member, Arnetta Murray, educator, elected official, and Todd Smith from Regal Media. Glad to have you all here, and happy King Day to you.
Thank you for having us.
So, first of all, when you guys think about Dr. King and his legacy, what does he mean to you, Kathy?
Stand for something or fall for anything. That's on all my correspondence. And fortunately, I can say that I was a young person during his era when he was assassinated in '69. And so through the years, I've studied him and I studied his teachings and realizing how important it is to utilize his teachings and what he stood for through every aspect of my life, not just my life, but to ensure that my children and my grandchildren know what he stood for, fighting for equality for everybody.
Todd, let's hear from you.
Just the way he did it with love in his heart. I mean, and I have to check myself a lot of times because I get passionate about my community and I get passionate about ending racism, but you don't fight hate with hate. You fight it with love, you fight it with understanding, and we're living in a society where getting rid of DEI is getting rid of the conversation. And I think that he would be very upset with that. We have to continue talking about these things, but do so open-mindedly. Don't get mad at a person if they don't understand where you're coming from, but try to educate them. They might not get it then, but they'll get it, hopefully they'll get it later and you make some type of impact. But what I do not like nowadays is the sanitation of Dr. King and his legacy. We love him now, but when he died, he was the first or the second most hated person in the world. Yeah. What happens is, we realize that he was right now, and now everybody wants to embrace his message. But a lot of things that he talked about and fought for, a lot of people who will be posted today are in putting out policies that go against what he stood for. So I think people need to really look at what he stood for. Don't just look at the I Have a Dream speech. He really criticized and critiqued America. He critiqued capitalism. He critiqued wars. Look at what the brother said. He even had second thoughts about integration after we integrated when he moved to Chicago later on in his life. So really educate yourself on Dr. King and don't just focus on a couple of those popular quotes.
Arnetta, your thoughts in a country now where people are against diversity, some people are against diversity, equity, and inclusion, and you have books taken off the shelves in school libraries. Your thoughts about his legacy surviving through that?
Well, it will survive if people like me and these sitting here, council members, political leaders, speak up and fight. One thing I loved about him, I was mentioning in a situation that I was in, is that he was strategic, very strategic in what he did. And unfortunately, as he said, he was well hated, but in spite of that, he pushed forward. And we have to do that as Black Americans. Sometimes people don't like us. Our own skin folks sometimes don't like us. And in the process, we still got to what? Push forward and make sure that we're being impactful. And I think that's what we have to do.
And what is our responsibility besides just seeing ourselves as victims, Arnetta?
Oh my God, being an elected official, you already know that, and I'm in Brazoria County. So you have to not focus on being a victim. What are you going to do to be impactful? What am I going to do? I had to make sure we've having I have to mention this, the first ever parade in Brazoria County, in Iowa Colony, because of what? 116 years, racism, you know that. So what I have to do, let's do this parade, let's talk about it, let's be about it. And in order to do that, you got to step outside by yourself, be criticized like I am, and do what I have to do. And that's just, and that's what he did. I'm just only doing what he did.
And as elected officials, the sacrifices that we give now to serve in those positions to make a difference, think about the time he spent away from his family and the sacrifices that was made. Ultimately, the sacrifice being his life.
And really quick, also, what do you think our responsibility is as a people to come to the table and not just play or, in some instances, be a victim? what do you think we should do to be a part of the solution as well?
Engagement, speaking up, speaking out, not being afraid to use your voice. Use your voice vocally, and then using your voice at the polls. That's the place that we can make the biggest differences at the poll. And I know people say all the time, and I know everybody's probably run into it, why should I vote? Because it doesn't matter, they're going to do what they want to do anyway. When you think about people having had to do litany tests just to be able to vote, having to count jelly beans just to be determined to vote, that in itself should tell you that it was important enough to our parents and our grandparents that we in turn should have it at the forefront and being equally important to us, because your vote and your voice make a difference.
Whether you win or lose, vote.
And do you see that as our power also, Todd?
Yeah, I do. We, like both of them said, Kathy and Arnetta said, just speak out. I talked to Kathy before we came on, and I think about all the times I've lost friends because I talk about certain things, quote unquote friends. I've angered some people. But if I don't speak out, what my grandparents went through, what my parents went through was in vain. I can't let that happen just to be your friend. I had my grandmother and my great aunt, they had a big conversation when Lyndon Johnson signed the Voting Rights Act in '65. My mother talked about it. They were in their 50s before they could vote. I'm not allowing us to go backwards just to be friends with somebody who really ain't my friend, no way. We just have to, like I said, we don't need to be a victim, but we need to be active. We need to be an advocate. And there's no victimhood in being a fighter. Just keep fighting, whether it's vocally, whether it's voting, whether it's by writing, whether just being open-minded with other people, but just stay in the fight.
We'll continue this conversation with you all when we get back. We'll be back with more Factor Uncensored. We're remembering Dr. Martin Luther King. Stay with us here on The Factor. And welcome back to this very special edition of The Factor Uncensored. We're remembering the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. Our guests are back here, and we're talking about responsibility. Is it our responsibility to help teach, educate others if they don't know about the black community or what we're going through? Todd, let's begin with you.
I believe so, because I'm not an expert on other cultures. I would want somebody to educate me on Asian culture, Latino culture, Native American culture. So I think it's my duty to educate people, especially if they're open-minded and want to learn. I have friends who ask questions and they want to learn, but I don't think we have to educate people in the traditional sense always. We can recommend books and stuff like that, but I can use my platform and put some history in an article. People, I do movie reviews, put some history in the movies. There's a lot of ways to educate people other than a typical textbook, but if we don't educate them, all of those battles will be lost and we might go backwards, and that's my fear.
All right. Arnetta, your thoughts about helping, educating, informing other communities?
I do it all the time. I'm at a school that is predominantly Latino. So they have different views because of what they've been taught. Well, I have to make sure that they understand it from my perspective, African-American perspective, because sometimes they're being taught the negative. But I'm trying to input or share with them what we've done that was good. So yes, it starts, I always say it starts where you're at. We try to make sure we ain't got to go to the mountaintop. Go right there to your housetop. Go to your classroom. Go to your family reunions and start talking about things, and man, it'll just blow their minds.
All right, Kathy, your thoughts about that, helping other communities understand African Americans?
It's important. I was talking to a friend of mine just today, and she was saying that, and she's Caucasian, that white girls, when you talk about white girls making a sandwich or black people making a sandwich, they thought that black people making a sandwich was a sandwich. We know a sandwich to be ham and cheese or whatever and mayonnaise. But our sandwiches, and there she was saying, we put avocado and tomatoes and lettuce on our, I said, we do too. So you're falling into that stereotype that we're eating sandwiches or sandwiches. There's two distinctions, really. You got the sandwich and you got the sandwich. And so until we talked about that, she didn't quite understand it. I mean, seriously, it's all about having the open dialogue and honesty. And so with the removal of DEI, then you eliminate or you minimize the opportunity for people to have that open and honest dialogue. I had a friend many, many years ago, and I said, she said she had to go shave her legs. I said, oh, we don't shave our legs like that. She said, well, I wish we didn't. I wish white girls didn't shave their legs. Because it was just, it's an exception, it's cultural differences.
All right, we want to thank you guys for joining us on The Factor Uncensored, remembering Dr. Martin Luther King.